Welcome to the Thursday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Thursday morning. Thank you so much for the follow, QuasiPack. I appreciate that. Thank you. How's it going, Heat? Morning. Hope you all grabbed your coffee or favorite beverage. We are going to have to start at a little bit of a more brisk pace because we have a few things to cover. Awesome, my man. How are you? I'm chilling. I am chilling. Got my coffee. Got my coffee with vanilla soy milk, which is very good for coffee. I think vanilla soy milk, quite honestly, is probably the best for coffee. Got my Code Red Mountain Dew. Don't be like Heat. Well, to be fair, I like the regular Mountain Dew. I don't know if Code Red is... I haven't tasted Mountain Dew in quite some time, but regular Mountain Dew is pretty good. Hey Memmius, how's it going? Howdy. Last night I made a seltzer and vanilla syrup. It was yum. Nice. Sounds good. Alright folks, so we're going to try to get through a couple of headlines and see if we can get through this video of ContraPoints interviewing or speaking with Noam Chomsky. So we're going to see if we can get to that one. Mind if I follow? No? Hey Gladonius, Code Red has that cherry medicine taste if you look into that, which I am. Oh, if you're into that, which I am. Okay, I see. I mean, it's like, so like cherry soda? Cherry medicine soda. Gotcha. Alright folks. We're gonna try to see if we can get through some of these, alright? This one sounds interesting because I think we've talked about this before. Japan isn't the only country that has tried this, and it seems to be very effective or very useful.
So, Japan is trying something really interesting, and I like it. This is Jeff Stein. The Japanese government has just unveiled its annual economic policy guidelines, which include new recommendations that companies permit their staff to opt to work 4 days a week instead of the typical 5.
True, this is a great idea.
Now, here's why this is such a big deal. Japan, very similar to the US, is actually a very work-obsessed culture. And here we have a situation where in a work-obsessed culture, the government is like, let's do 4 days instead of 5. Let's give people the option to opt into that. Whoa, because that gives me hope that if they could do it, we might be able to do it too at some point.
Oh, Kyle. Oh, Kyle. No, that's not how this works. No. Listen, it took us how long? How long has the, how long has even the fight for 15 been going on? Just as just as a reference point, how long has the fight for 15 been going on? And we have yet to even implement that across the board. It's been a state by state battle to win each and every one of those states, little by little by little, right? I think that this isn't, it's not gonna happen here, not like this. Not this. I mean, like, listen. I get the idea. I get the concept, and I'm not knocking it because there have been numerous studies that have shown that indeed a 4-day week, 4-day work week is actually more productive. Is actually more productive than the regular 5. Turns out, when you treat people like people, they produce more.
So there have been studies which show that productivity
there we go. Thank you.
When you go to 4 days. I think there were some that say stays the same, and then others say, no, it literally increases. So you get more accomplished from working fewer days because when you have more days off, you refresh and you're more on the ball.
Right, and not only that, if you the same can be said about instead of 8-hour work days, it should be, I think they found out that actually like diminishing it to 6 hours is actually even better for the company, obviously for the worker as well, but just as productivity wise, if you really want to make that argument, a 6-hour work day is actually much better. I think I read a book once about an 8-hour work week. I wasn't able to do it. Well, it depends on the said work, and depends on what the rest of that of how that entails. It sounds like a concept from the Conquest of Bread. Right, we don't follow the good examples. I'm pretty sure the Netherlands has a 4-day work week. Yes, I think that I think that some of these European countries have it. Yeah, this is not that long ago. This was this year, almost 2 months ago. Spain announced that it will experiment a trial of 4-day work weeks. According to The Guardian, the Spanish government agreed to a 32-hour work week over 3 years without cutting, and here's the kicker, without cutting workers' compensation. Now that's great. Hey Kevin, how's it going? The Kevin FM. Here, I got one here. You didn't have to do that, but thank you, of course. Of course. The pilot program is intended to reduce employers' risk by having the government make up the difference in the salary when workers switch to a 4-day schedule. It will invest about around 50 million euros, which is about 60 million, towards the cost of the pilot program. For the companies that want to participate, it's anticipated that 200 companies and from 3,000 to 6,000 workers will be involved in the project. Nice. Oh no, I'm as cishet as they come. Him. ADT is the best. Thank you. Hey, how's it going, Catboy? Inigo Errejón Calván, a Spanish political scientist and politician serving as a member of the 14th Congress of Deputies, said that with the 4-day weekend, we're launching into real debate of our times, an idea whose time has come. Yeah, I mean, like, it's been known. I appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate you. The point being is that there has been enough data, evidence, studies, whatever you want to call it, to suggest. Yeah, same KTS. Inigo Errejón? I'm not even gonna pretend. I'm not even gonna pretend I know how to pronounce this, even though like my first language is Spanish. Spain Spanish is different, okay? Spain Spanish is different. Oh wait, that's an ñ. Íñigo Erejón Galván. There you go. That's how you... Okay, hold on. I got it. Íñigo Erejón Galván. That's how you should... I think that's how it's pronounced. Hey Jesse, how's it going? The point being is that there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it's actually much better for everybody involved. Everybody involved to have a 4-day workday, right? A 4-day workday. Like, Inigo Montoya, you killed my father. Prepare to die. Where have I heard that before? Wait, what movie is this from? The Princess Bride. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, The Princess Bride. I'd love to live in Japan. They wear their masks regardless of COVID, 4-day work weeks, and they're desperately looking for people to join the dating market. True. True. Spanish is the same all around. Yeah, but yes, but Spain Spanish is a little bit different in terms of like how they there's, I guess, not, I don't want to say dialect because they're the mother language, but their way of pronouncing certain words and they use different words than we do. La ñ se pronuncia igual. Yeah, that's true. I was just not paying attention. But yes. I mean, like, the basis of it is pretty similar, but some of the different ways they pronounce and have their words are not the same way as we have in Central America. TLDR, I maintain that working more hours does not mean working better. True. That's the TLDR that we should be taking from this.
When you're working. That shouldn't be too surprising to people. Also, whenever we talk about this, I like to give people the history of this. They don't understand that we were so close to having a 4-day work week during the Great Depression in the New Deal era.
Yeah,
in fact,
well, sorry, Kyle.
I
Listen.
believe it was a 30...
Listen, I agree with you. We're on the same page about what we need to do in terms of workers' rights, but I feel like this is a tad bit too much on the hopium, you know? Not that I disagree with anything that he's saying. Íñigo Erejón is infamous in Spanish because he looks like a child. Interesting. I did not know that.
Hour work week bill passed the House of Representatives. And I think there was some last-minute compromise which axed it and made it a 40-hour work week. And that was part of some New Deal deal that was made, bill that was signed into law. But we were this close, man.
Congratulations, Kevin.
I always reference. It's this alternate article from over a decade ago where they're giving the history on this. Even conservative Republican presidents were open about the fact, like, yeah, I mean, I think we should get to a point where people have, you know, multiple paid months off every year. Yeah. You had conservative Republicans who were like, paid time off is a no-brainer and it should be at least a month or two.
Right, because these weren't like these. Okay, so back then it was a completely different attitude towards like there was more sympathetic actions and sympathetic because of obviously the Great Depression was going on. There was more sympathetic. I guess there was more sympathies towards like the worker. Thank you. Okay, so there we go. Hey, Octo Squiddies. Okay, so there we go. The Kevin FM collected my thoughts for me. People had less contempt for the plight of the workers back then, so it was a lot. It was a lot easier to talk about, weekends, wages, situations in the workplace, things like that. Spanish Left also recently approved a universal income for unemployment, like you get $1,000 a month anyways. Nice, like a UBI.
Now if Bernie says that,
depends.
people, oh my God, communist, Marxist, tyrant, totalitarian, dictator, worst person on earth, idiot, dumbass, prick, we hate you. Conservative Republicans used to say everybody should get paid time off by law. We literally passed a bill through the House of Representatives that was like a 30-hour work week. See, by the way, now here's the saddest part. The reason why we were able to get shit like that through back then is because money wasn't in politics yet. So you actually had more of a debate on like the ideas, as opposed to, hey, I got to represent my donors. I got to
Yes, but I hold on. I feel like there was other factors involved back then. Not that I'm not disregarding, not that I'm discounting that may play a part, because it absolutely does. There's no way that anybody can convince me otherwise that money, especially after Citizens United was a thing, money and large corporations and wealthy individuals have absolutely an undue influence on our politics. Absolutely. I'm just not sure that that's the only factor that was there back then.
Represent Raytheon and Pfizer every time I vote. So unfortunately, our politicians are corrupt now, and this stuff barely gets brought up. The Democrats actually have similar things on the agenda, paid time off and stuff, and paid maternity leave on the agenda, but yeah, it's actually got to get through reconciliation. And are you going to hold Manchin and Sinema and the 7 or 8 asshole Democrats who are just complete corporate sellouts? I don't know. We'll see. I doubt it, but, a boy can dream. But anyway, yeah, man, 4-day work week, I really do in many ways view it as a no-brainer. Most people are working jobs that they despise. I forget the number, but it was something like only 15% of the workforce feels engaged at their job, which really hits me as like only 15% really like their job in a way where they want to be doing it. I mean, that's a crisis.
Imagine.
That's a scandal. So if it's that low and people are working these jobs they don't want to work, either we need to retool the economy so people do fulfilling work, or in the meantime, at least make it so you have to spend fewer hours in that misery.
Yeah, and not only that, like if you treat your employees like people, I know this is a wild concept, but if you treat your employees like people, then a lot of this sentiment wouldn't be as high as it is, right? You will tolerate it just a little bit more because you're compensated and you have a work-life balance. A 4-day weekend would definitely be fucking pog. Absolutely. Lawyering is draining. Shh. I bet.
So 4-day work week, 100% in favor of that. And we can still be just as productive, if not more so, and we get more leisure time. Everybody's happier. I do think you'd see a drastic change when it comes to anxiety, depression, and things of that nature.
True.
So
I think there's studies based on that.
Japan has it right.
Not,
now, I think they're just experimenting 100%. With it at this point. There's other things they reference as like mitigating factors and whatever, but at least they're giving it a shot. And I'd love to see something like that in the U.S., especially since other countries, it was either Spain or Portugal, experimented with it, and I'm pretty sure it went well. So hopefully,
well, we don't
next.
know that. Wait. It's starting in 2 months, or it started 2 months ago. So yeah, we'll know. We'll know after the trial is over. I'm kind of tired of all the politicians' corrupt narrative. It's nonsense. We obviously need more ethical reforms, but come on, not everyone is an evil money worshiper. True. All polls are trending towards employees are either getting the same amount of work done or more at work done by working from home since the pandemic. True. I have been told I have the mind of a lawyer, but I don't know if I have the drive. Like, basically, to be a basically to be a lawyer is to be a professional debate bro. To be a lawyer as like a career is like basically to be a professional debate bro. Change my mind. Not always, thank God. But litigation for sure. Yeah. That's right, Claydonius. Morning future billionaires. That's right. Everybody here is a future embarrassed billionaire, right? That's what it is. How's it going, man? All right, Kyle. The idea, as always, I agree with. I just think that it needs to be delivered in a different way, in my opinion. But the idea of a 4-day work week and the concept of the work-life balance and try to give people more headspace with that, I think is incredibly important and should be something that we should be considering. Alright, let's see if we can get through this one. We may need to speed it up just a bit. Oi.
Generation for decades.
Sunrise Movement activists got arrested at the White House protesting Joe Biden. And I have the details, images, and clips.
So he gets half credit on his homework, right?
Exactly. Coming up. First here, the tweet with the details and images of the arrest. So Sunrise Movement here tweeted out saying, "Today we showed up to Joe Biden's doorstep with 500 plus people and blockaded every entrance to the White House, demanding that he include a fully funded civilian climate corps in his infrastructure bill. Secret Service then arrested dozens of us." So take a look at some of the
Future Wolf with the resubscription for 2 months. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
To protest Joe Biden and his horrible compromise right now on infrastructure. And I'll get to more on that in a second. But first, the civilian climate
this is
corps.
so
you may wonder
frustrating.
what this is. I'll link to Sunrise Movement's full explanation below the video in the description box on YouTube. But let me give you just a quick overview here of what they say. So the Civilian Climate Corps is a visionary policy that would create a government jobs program putting a new generation of Americans to work combating the climate crisis. More specifically, it's a program organized through the Department of the Interior and Agriculture and aims to conserve and restore public lands and waters, bolster community resilience, increase reforestation, increase carbon sequestration in the agriculture sector, protect biodiversity, improve access to recreation, and address the changing climate. So this has happened before. This is not...
Yeah, no. The Civilian Corps... the Civilian Climate Corps is not like a new concept, but again, I'm really worried that none of this is going to be included because they're so hell-bent, I don't know what the word would be, but they're so focused on attempting to create some kind of illusion of bipartisanship that the most crucial parts of this infrastructure bill, because all of this can be and is a part of infrastructure. All these crucial things that are necessary are going to get thrown out, right? What we're going to end up is like, okay, so we fixed roads and the pipes and the bridges and yeah, we did a thing, which is obviously incredible. It needs to happen regardless, but the key important parts in terms of like the climate change stuff, if that gets thrown out, if that gets thrown out, then I feel like a lot of the momentum is gone at that point. Will David ever cut his hair? I feel like no. Well, he might not. I'm not sure. Maybe he likes this. He likes this group. He likes this look. His partner likes it. Oh, there you go. There's your answer.
Not a new idea. So AOC was also at this protest and said this, quote, "They want you to think, oh, this is a new idea. This is too ambitious. This is too crazy. How about this? The last time we introduced the Civilian Climate Corps in this country, we hired and mobilized 250,000 people in 3 months." Ocasio-Cortez told the crowd, referring to the New Deal era Civilian Conservation Corps. Quote, "We're going to get that into this infrastructure bill," added the congresswoman who represents parts of the Bronx.
So my point was that this attempt at bipartisanship is going to torpedo some of the most important and crucial aspects of this infrastructure bill. So I think that they really, at this point, should just do it through reconciliation, right? Why are they so hell-bent on bipartisanship in this specific topic that's so important, only to not get support from them anyways? This is incredibly frustrating. Male pattern baldness answered the question of when to get a haircut for me. Sometimes when I talk to David, there's wild debates over his hair in the comments. He's a rock star. Nice. Howdy, howdy, howdy. It's really hard not to be blackpilled on this. Yes, I agree. Unfortunately. So there's a couple of wonderful folks in chat. Please follow twitch.tv/surfergogritty, twitch.tv/heat420_, and don't forget to follow twitch.tv/thekevinfm. Did you talk about James Franco? No, what's happening with James Franco? Sorry, I usually don't keep up with like Hollywood stars or anything like that. Hey, Quasipack. By the way, thank you for the follow. Ooh, yikes. He has a sexual assault scandal. Yikes. Is this like, Did he get a Me Too? Was this recent? An optimistic view is that bipartisanship polls well. I think the actual explanation that bipartisanship is great is a great excuse to not do anything. Yeah, this is the... Yeah, that's the problem, Quasipack. I covered it this morning. Oh, because not many know about it. Yikes. Jesus. Well, is this new? Or... No, yikes. Actor James Franco agreed to pay $2 million to settle a sexual misconduct lawsuit filed by several of his former students. Hoo boy. Oh, in 2019. Okay, so semi-recent? A student a class action lawsuit by former students who attended Franco's studio for acting, which he ran from 2014 to 2017. Sarah Tither Kaplan Tony Gao has alleged in their class action suit they and others were coerced into filming overt sexual acts by Franco and his partners. Yikes. Yikes. It's human nature to abuse power. Yeah, I think that, like... I think there's a high possibility that whenever a person is put in a position of power, that the chances for abuse go like exponentially high, you know? Basically it's the same shit as Cosby, worse. Yeah, I think so, because like I mean, this dude just said, here you go, $2 million and that's it. Oh, wait, $2 million and no repercussions, right? Yes, Cosby is being let free. $2 million and you just settle. Human nature is used as an excuse for people to do bad things. No one's had no it's a positive trait. It's just a human nature. Yeah, I mean, like sometimes it can be. Sometimes I think that maybe you have a point there, Memo, where like, you know what, kindness, empathy, compassion is human nature. Maybe we should focus on that. Yes, kindness is human nature. Due to a legal technicality. What? The proposed settlement includes language that would release claims by all parties while Franco and other defendants continue to deny the allegations. Then if it's so, see, this is what I don't understand. if you didn't do the thing, then why are you so adamant about settling and just ending the case right there? If you didn't do the thing, why are you so adamant about just settling and just ending the case, ending the legal case against you right then and there? The proposed settlement includes language that would release yes. While defendants continue to deny allegations in the complaint, they acknowledge that plaintiffs have raised important issues, and all parties strongly believe that now is a critical time to focus on address the mistreatment of women in Hollywood. Wait, you can't just like throw $2 million on it and then just like leave. Okay, sure. From what I understand, he made a plea deal with the prosecutor, which include no jail time, but then he got jailed anyways. This is okay, I see. I'm confusing the things. Okay, got you, Kevin. Biscotti and is it biscotti? And coffee for breakfast. Amazing. Amazing. TLDR, this is horrifying. And yeah, must be nice to just throw $2 million to make a problem go away, I suppose. Must be nice to just throw $2 million. This is the same thing with the with all these like companies who get away with like poisoning people. These companies who get away with like destroying the planet. These companies who get away with like effectively creating the opioid crisis. They just throw a couple of $1 million. In the case of Purdue, $1 billion and $4 billion, and that's it. You know, the problem solved. Oh yeah, you opened up a fraudulent acting school in which you abused your power to quote unquote push the boundaries for coercing your students to perform, you know, sexual acts in front of the camera. All you have to do is just pay $2 million and it'll go away. Unbelievable. I wouldn't necessarily read every settlement as acknowledgement of guilt, as acknowledging guilt, even though it frequently seems to be the case. Yeah, that's a good point. But still, like, because I mean, if so, like, couldn't you like twist this around and like, I don't know, if these were fake allegations, couldn't you twist it around and then like sue them and then like basically then it would be the fake accusations that would be in trouble? Like, I don't know. I feel like if you didn't do the thing, why would you? Maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. At the end of the day, only the people that were there probably would ever be able to confirm what happened. And it's just bizarre. I guess must be nice. You just throw $2 million to make something go away. Yeah. ADT, hope you're having a good morning, my friend. Hey, thank you. Hope you're having a good morning. Settlements are walkaway agreements since you have to try your case in court where the parties present clashing facts. Otherwise, you probably agreed to settle the less damaging option of the two. Right. Right. Yeah, who knows? Either way, this is gross. That's all I can say. This is gross. Good for Gabby. Thank you for the follow. TLDR, gross and creepy.
We're going to see. I hope that progressives in the House have the guts to block an infrastructure package that does not include a civilian climate corps. But we're going to see. So also, you know, this is why I have such a hard time believing they're going to do this, because ultimately at the end of the day, moderate Democrats and Republicans do not care if nothing gets done. This is why the left is
true. True. Okay, true.
Always at a constant, the left in Congress is always at a constant disadvantage in these fights because we actually want to get something done, help some people, but the right and moderates simply do not care. If
No, I think they're fighting for it. I think the idea is to bring attention that this is actually a part of the infrastructure bill so that they don't axe it. But we all know that at the end of the day, if we don't, like, God, this is so frustrating. Just pass it through reconciliation and be done with it. Representative Nagus is from CO and doing good work.
I think they would rather take nothing than actually invest into people. So we're going to see if there's a showdown.
Yeah, I mean, like, they would have no problem. They would, in fact, see, this is the thing, like, this is the thing, like, the progressive, like, I don't know, I guess it's like the concept of, like, force the vote, but, like, the progressives who have a handful of people in there, all of a sudden, like, don't vote for a specific bill and torpedoes the bill. That's exactly what they want. They don't want to do anything. I don't know. It's such a catch-22 because, like, because if you stop it, and if you stop the infrastructure bill because it didn't go far enough, then you're doing exactly this. Then you know, the rest of the Democratic Party gets to wipe their hands and be like, look, I mean, it's not our fault. It's their fault. But if you don't stop it at the same time, then all you'll get is possibly A, nothing, or possibly B, a bill that doesn't include one of the most important things, the most important aspect of the entire infrastructure plan, the actual, like, the actual reason why it's being proposed. Yeah, exact same dance, and it wastes their political capital. Establishment Dems will raise holy hell in the media that progressives are blocking. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is such a catch-22, Octosquiddies, because, like, if they torpedo that bill, then they're gonna get all the heat, and then A, they get to wipe their hands they get absolved from doing nothing. This is absolutely, like, infuriating, because out of all the things that so far have come up in terms of, like, creating any meaningful change or addressing any meaningful problems in this country, this is as close as it gets. Okay, climate change is incredibly important, and as we're seeing in the last week or so, the devastating heat wave across the Pacific Northwest, already, by the way, it's been not even a month into hurricane season, and we're at 4 storms have already formed. 2 are on the way in the Atlantic, I think. So yeah, climate change is incredibly important. It is the issue of issues in terms of what we can address, and, like, the absolute, like, the idea that finally we might somehow make a tiny step to attempt to even begin to address this issue is going to get torpedoed. It's incredibly infuriating. That's the problem.
And what happens there, but absolutely a civilian climate corps, I mean, of course, needs to be part of this this package. And we've seen, we're seeing right now extreme weather, the extreme heat wave in the West, in addition, of course, to constant floods, forest fires, other extreme weather events that are caused by climate change. And that is just one aspect of the climate crisis.
Even more importantly than to create a civilian climate corps, even more important than that, because, like, I mean, that's good. It's a good idea. We need to figure out how to get off fossil fuels as quickly as possible, in as many ways as possible. And that was the entire, or at least a part of the idea behind the infrastructure bill, right? Is to revamp the way we do energy, and attempt to make a more renewable, sustainable energy system or energy grid, right? That's part of the quote unquote Green New Deal. That's part of the infrastructure plan because it's part of infrastructure. Of course it is. So, I mean, man, this is so frustrating.
So this is all putting the future of the planet, of humanity, of all life in jeopardy. There has to be real substantial change for anything to possibly get done in terms of preventing more destruction further down the line. Now, a little more on this. So the White House rejected the idea that this package does nothing for climate. In response to Monday's protest, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki pushed back against progressive critiques on the deal, saying, quote, "I would dispute the notion that it doesn't do anything for climate," which some are arguing. The Hill reports that Psaki highlighted provisions on clean energy, electric buses, and legacy pollution. Quote, "Whether or not everyone is aware of all those specifics," Psaki said, "that's incumbent on us to keep conveying that, communicating it, listening, and making sure people understand that this is a down payment, and the president will continue to advocate for, press for, work for even more on climate, as he will in the reconciliation bill in the process moving forward."
Okay, but...
Well, it is so absurd to claim that this bill, the way it currently sits, does anything important for climate. Great response here from Evan Weber, who said, "Unacceptable comment from a press secretary that demands immediate clarification. Climate measures in bipartisan deal nowhere close to what Joe Biden ran on, let alone what is scientifically necessary. This is why Sunrise Movement is at White House." So Joe Biden's, plan when he was running for president was already a compromise on climate. Already didn't do enough. And now here is even a further compromise to the right that essentially erases any of the big provisions that would have been in infrastructure to actually address the climate crisis. So the White House, covering for this, of course, it's Jen Psaki's job to do that, but it's completely ridiculous that anybody would take her seriously. Now, let me get to some images and some videos. So first here, Ida Chavez from The Intercept posted a couple images here saying, quote, "Biden, you coward, fight for us," and "No climate, no deal" signs at Sunrise rally outside the White House. Absolutely love to see this. Big group there. Lots of signs. Let's get to a few videos here. Act.tv did a fantastic job. Have several videos on this. I will link to their page below this video as well in the description box. So let me play 3 clips for you. So I'll play this clip from a Sunrise activist discussing what's at stake.
Okay, so because we have to like...
which is just powerful. You will see why. And I'll end on...
Because we have to like get through a lot of these things. I want to see if we can watch this interview. The point is, TLDR, I think that this is all frustrating, and we will see exactly exactly where we end up, but don't hold your breath, folks. Cool, so here's a nice story. GOP donor pays $1 million to deploy South Dakota National Guard. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Willis Johnson said he just wanted to help. Really? Interesting. So earlier this month, the billionaire Republican donor who amassed a fortune building an international junkyard empire took the unusual step of calling South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem, a rising Republican star, has railed against illegal immigration in South Dakota. Okay. And aligned herself firmly with President Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump. He asked if he wanted to send National Guard troops from South Dakota to the US-Mexico border and offered up to $1 million to help. Noem said yes. Her acceptance of the donation from Johnson, who doesn't even live in Noem's state, but rather in Tennessee. Wait. So this clown doesn't live even in the state and is offering to throw money at a governor to deploy the National Guard to the southern border in a state that neither of you live in. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. My boss said, "Oh, I don't lay around in the sand anymore," to me as if to say that I waste my time going to and from the shore. That's nonsense. The stuff that you enjoy doing is for you to enjoy. If the things that make you happy include like laying down on the couch for a good 2 hours doing nothing, then who's anybody, much less your boss, to tell you that that's bad? If your passion is to, like, I don't know, play video games for a couple of hours, who's anybody to tell you that that's not like your, like, that's not your right to, like, you know, be happy to play video games or read or whatever it is that you like, or surf. Like, wait, what? Seems like a jerk surfer girl. Her acceptance of the donation from Johnson, who doesn't even live in Nome State but rather in Tennessee, has drawn intense scrutiny. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. It landed in state coffers on Tuesday, and though it came from Johnson's private foundation and appears to be quote-unquote legal, that's dubious, experts say it sets a troubling precedent in which a wealthy patron is effectively commandeering U.S. military might to address private political motivations. Right, so this is exactly the reasons why things like Citizens United shouldn't be a thing. I mean, imagine attempting to donate to a politician for the, effectively a trade-off between I'll give you a donation of $1 million for your campaigns if you do X for me, which in this case would be deploy the National Guard to wherever I want. Wait, that's not how, this isn't, listen, this isn't Ancapistan, okay? Hey, spread it forward. How's it going? This isn't Ancapistan, okay? Imagine having this much power. Imagine having this much power to donate to a governor, and in return, the said governor will quote-unquote deploy the National Guard of its state to, I guess, defend from the hordes of brown people. I didn't know it'd build into a bonfire. Johnson, who answered his phone on the second ring, and estimates he's talked about 50 reporters since the news broke. It's getting out there and a lot more than I thought. Whether the decision to accept this help will amount to smart politics or policy blunder for Noam is unclear. In the short term, at least the decision has catapulted her into headlines and generated even more attention for a possible presidential run in 2024. Nice meme. Yeah, here's the real problem. Here's the real problem. The pay-to-play transaction also highlights another way that big dollar donors have insinuated themselves into governmental processes to drive decisions. Yeah, that is a huge problem. In no way, shape, or form should someone be able to donate this much money to obtain a favor, or to somehow magically, by total coincidence, their will gets done. We got 37,649 fried chicken sandwich choices, so clearly this is the greatest country in the world. True. We don't need this donation, whether it's legal or not. It's a terrible idea because it looks like our guardsmen are being used as political. It doesn't look like it. That's effectively what it is. That's effectively, if I donate, if I donate $1 million to, I don't know, Ron DeSantis, and I just kind of like suggest the idea of sending, suggesting the idea that he should send law enforcement to, I don't know, X, Y, or Z, and I suggest the idea that he should send law enforcement to the southern border, right? Which, by the way, that's happening. But I donate that money with that suggestion, and said suggestion happens. Just by coincidence, said suggestion happens to be a good idea on the part of the Florida governor. Isn't that me effectively commandeering the state police or state law enforcement? Unbelievably cringe. I don't even know how this is like... this is legal. That's right, Surfer Go. Gnome spokesman Ian Fury, said the money would help alleviate the cost to taxpayers of deploying the 50-person contingent, adding that it would it could legally be accepted into a state fund designated for responding to emergencies and disasters. South Dakota currently has a budget surplus, something Noam has boasted about. So A, they don't need the money. B, why is a billionaire allowed to have a say in this? C, what does South Dakota have to do with the southern border? I'm sorry, is the emergency in South Dakota? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I took like a geography class. Pretty sure that it has nothing to do with you. South Dakota state law suggests that that's not the way such donations are intended to be used. The law states that the fund can only be used to meet special emergency requirements of the Division of Emergency Management, an agency tasked with preparing the state for natural disasters and other emergencies. Right, which then they would say, well, we think that this is an emergency, even though they're in South Dakota. This is absolutely ridiculous. Yes, it's basically a private citizen essentially ordering state guardsmen that have absolutely nothing to do with anything. Furthermore, that quote-unquote citizen isn't even a citizen of South Dakota. Oh man, can you imagine if like... Can you imagine? Okay, can you imagine the media, the Fox News like wall-to-wall coverage if Bill Gates donated to, I don't know, if Bill Gates donated to California governor for the deployment of like law enforcement to X, Y, or Z or some like, I don't know, make up some like parallel scenario. Can you imagine the wall-to-wall coverage that this would be? I'm heading out, but thank you for streaming like a chat. Thank you, I appreciate that, the Kevin FM. It's almost pointless to right, but there should only be one Dakota. Yeah, so can you imagine the wall-to-wall-to-wall coverage if it was on the reverse? Which, by the way, that wouldn't make it good. Alright, there should be no reason why anybody and any regular citizen that is not a governmental official, that is not within the purview of the executive branch of a state government, should ever have a say in any way, shape, or form as to where, how, and how many National Guard get deployed of that state. Period. Alright, so, federal judge puts Florida deplatforming law on hold, citing First Amendment, because of course it would be. This was all done for political grandstanding, never to actually address any issues or anything like that. Well, rich people at the local level hire cops to patrol their specially gated communities all the time. Yeah, true, but like that's a whole other thing than to have them literally call up a governor of a state they don't even live in and say, look, I'll give you $1 million for like donations for emergency responses to deploy the guard. Wait, no, that's another level, OG Landshark. That's a whole other level cross. That's crossing another line. That's crossing another line. A federal judge on Wednesday put on hold a first-of-its-kind law in Florida that authorized the state to penalize social media companies when they ban political candidates. A win for social media companies as they try to keep control of their platforms. Yeah. I'm pretty sure governors cannot deploy guard into other states. I think they can if they get permission to, well, they would have to get permission from the other governors. They just can't march in there with their guard. They can't just march in there with their guard. They have to get permission from the states that they're crossing through. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Right, right. You can't just like take your National Guard and march wherever you want. It's not how that works. I think even responding to moving even responding to like calls for moving the National Guard into the DC Capitol back in January, I think they even had to like work out I want to say in the most like layman's terms, because I don't know the wording, but like they had to work out the permissions between moving the guards from the states. How did it work out for Rome to have armies loyal to the people, not to the state? Yeah, well. Judge Dredd is a great documentary. Alright. Hinkle said that the law, U.S. District Judge Robert Hinkle issued a preliminary injunction blocking enforcement of the law, which was scheduled to go in effect on Thursday. Hinkle said the law's ban on deplatforming likely violated the free speech rights of the tech companies, which under the First Amendment are generally free to decide what to publish without government interference. The legislation compels providers to host speech that violates their standards, speech that they otherwise would not host, and forbids providers from speaking as they otherwise would. Referring to the sweeping scope of the law, he added, like prior First Amendment restrictions, this is an instance of burning the house to roast a pig. The law says that a platform may not permanently delete or ban a candidate for office. Suspension of up to 14 days are allowed under the law, and a service could still remove some individual posts that violate its terms of service. The state's elections commissions could fine a social media company $250,000 a day for statewide candidates, $25,000 a day for other candidates. If a company were to found to have violated the laws, individuals could also sue. Florida's Republican-led legislature passed the law this year, partly as a response to social media bans against President Trump after the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Tech companies, including Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, said Trump broke their TOS, their rules, including by promoting violence. But the law is also the latest episode in a year-long fight between social media platform and Republican politicians. Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican, said in May when he signed the law that it was a protection against Silicon Valley elites for real Floridians. What is a real Floridian? I don't know what that means. Hinkle said the statements from DeSantis and others showed the law to be viewpoint-based discrimination. The legislation now at issue was an effort to rein in social media providers deemed too large and too quote-unquote liberal. I don't even know what that means. But he added, balancing the exchange of ideas among private speakers is not a legitimate governmental interest. Even aside from the actual motivation of legislation, it is plainly content-based and subject to strict scrutiny. Yes, corporations do not have rights. They are not people. True, but it's funny how that always comes back, right? You know, they attempted to like give corporations like effectively, from what I understand, personhood by allowing them to create all of these like unlimited legal slush funds for donations and all that stuff. And then now, when they try to say, wait a minute, we need to restrict corporations, the law says, wait, they're people, you can't violate their First Amendment rights. Wait. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but I just find it interesting. The point being is, it's unconstitutional. Why would you ever think that law would ever work? Hinkle's ruling came in a lawsuit filed by two tech industry groups, NetChoice and Computer and Communications Industry Association. Their members include Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Alphabet. We cannot stand idly by as Florida lawmakers push unconstitutional bills into law that bring us closer to state-run media and a state-run internet. Texas state lawmakers considered a similar bill during their session this year, but did not pass it. Yeah, I'm sure they wanted to see what would happen here. No, this isn't gonna fly. This isn't gonna fly. All right, folks. I got a meme article for the day. Trump Organization has CFO indicted. So we actually have the official indictment for Trump's very legal, very not sketchy organization. Offices of the Manhattan DA and New York Attorney General have obtained indictments. This is, again, just to be clear, this has nothing to do with Donald Trump himself. It seems like his what is it, CFO or whoever runs Trump Organization, the guy, is the one that's going to take the L here. Have obtained indictments against the Trump Organization and its longtime finance chief Alan Weisselberg. Yeah, the fall guy. Two people familiar with the matter. The indictments against the organization and Weisselberg handed up by the New York grand jury is expected to be unsealed in court on Thursday afternoon in Manhattan, a Trump representative told NBC. Weisselberg is expected to surrender Thursday morning, the Washington Post reported earlier, citing sources. The Post said that he is expected to be arraigned in front of a state judge later that day. The Trump Organization is also expected to be arraigned. Yeah, I mean, like, wow, surprised Pikachu face? A con man's organization is being, like, indicted for very sketchy financial dealings? Wow, amazing. Amazing. NPR had a story last night on my way home about how dudes prepping can save us from the Civil War because it's the only thing the left and right agrees about. We need to prepare for a bad future, so let's buy canned food and learn how to make our own roof shingles. Yes, but like... yes, but also... no. I don't know if, like... I think we agree on the premise that we should understand that, especially because of climate change, rough times, maybe even the impending, like, economic strife, hard times are coming. So I think that we both understand, like, as just people, that tough times are coming. He was the guy mentioned when AOC questioned Cohen about Trump's insurance fraud. Yeah. I mean, like, yes, exactly. We even have an emote thanks to sourcing support. Surprise Pikachu face. A known con man's organization is being arraigned for, fraud. I'm amazed that Trump has managed to keep his tax returns under wraps. This trial might finally end that. Yep. Possibly. Former President Trump is not expected to be charged this week, the Post source says, but indictments could bring possible fines and legal problems to his company. However, prosecutors hope Weisselberg will exchange testimony against Trump for reducing his own risk, another source. Yeah, I mean, listen, wherever the corruption is and wherever the fraud happens, those people should be held responsible. Simple. Easy clap. A representative from Manhattan's District Attorney, Cyrus Vance Jr., declined CNBC's request for comment. Trump Organization lawyer Ronald Fischetti and the immediate comment. Weisselberg's lawyer Mary Mulligan declined to comment. That's true, Jesse. I'm not surprised. Yeah, so here it goes, into, like, the allegations of his, fraud. Well, the organization, Trump Organization's fraud. Which we know is, we know that, these things came up with those, congressional hearings of Michael Cohen. That the Trump Organization misstated the value of various real estate assets to benefit from lower tax obligations or to receive more favorable terms on loans and insurance related to those properties. Yeah, not surprised. Again, these are what went on in those congressional hearings. TLDR, it seems like they're gonna crack down hard on this, as they should, and hopefully anybody who's involved in this fraud will we'll get their we'll get their just desserts. I won't hold my breath though. Cute animal video. All right, let's do it.
These on.
Yes. Aww. It's a fruit bat. Hey. Aww. Oh, he's a little fur ball. That's cute. She's got a little pep to her step. Yeah, Skipper the poodle. It was a neat conversation to manage a cute ideas for anyone to learn. Yeah, sure. I'll throw it up on. Nice. Wait. I want to hear the story behind this one. Can't confirm black bears are ninjas. True. Is he eating like a giant carrot? Duckling. I like the ducklings when they're like that tiny. They're little tiny floofs. Ball of floof. That's not a carrot. I don't know. It looks like it. Turtle. All right. Okay, that was really weird. That was really weird. Can everybody see? Okay. I think we are barely hanging in there, but OBS had a huge problem. Let me quit Discord because it says it's still streaming, so I'm gonna assume it's still streaming. Okay. Alright, folks.
So returning with the one and only Natalie Wynn, aka ContraPoints. They're going to have a conversation on the future of the left. So we'll begin in a moment, but if everyone except Noam and Natalie can just turn off their camera, and I'll tag Natalie in a moment, and she'll be softly leading the conversation with Noam. And they'll be in the conversation for about 40 minutes. Then Natalie will tag me back in, and then we'll have about 20 minutes for Q&A, 60 minutes in total. Hopefully we'll get about 1 or 2 questions in. So Noam, Natalie, welcome back to the STOA, and Natalie, I'll tag you in. Oh, you're on mute. Both of you are on mute.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you for having me back. And Professor Chomsky, it's nice to meet you. So our topic is the future of the left. So I guess for the last year, I feel like I have been in a lot of arguments with other leftists about the 2020 election. And especially with people I know who are in their 20s, their awakening to politics was Bernie Sanders and the Sanders movement. And a lot of them were very deeply frustrated by the fact that Biden was the Democratic nominee. So to the extent that they didn't want to vote for him. And I was always arguing, oh, no, we have to vote against Trump. #1 priority. But now that Biden has won, I guess there's part of me that has this nagging guilt. Like I was the one saying, oh, no, we got to do Biden. I promise I'm not going to check out and go to brunch if Biden wins. But now I find that I am a little bit more complacent without, without this malignant charlatan, tweeting from the White House every day. So I guess, so to me, the future of the left, for the near future, is like how to influence from the outside, for those of us who are not politicians, like how to influence the Democratic Party in a left-wing direction. Like, can this be done? I guess I feel like I want to be able to tell these very passionate, like 22-year-olds that, like, yes, like it's good that Biden's in office and we have some chance to influence an administration like this. Professor Chomsky, do you think that's
true?
Do you think that there's significant ways of doing that?
Oh, definitely. In fact, it's already been done. Should just make one comment about the election since you brought it up. In November 2020, there were 2 choices. One choice was to vote against Trump. The other choice was to help Trump win. Abstaining meant help Trump win. Helping Trump win meant consigning ourselves to 4 years in which the environment would probably be destroyed. We might reach tipping points from which there would be no escape, plus lots more. So basically there was no choice. The only choice was to vote against Trump. Okay, that in our system, that means cast your vote for Biden. Okay, well, just barely, Trump was defeated. A couple of tens of thousands of votes, it might have changed. Of course, he lost by 7 million votes, but in our radically defective democracy, votes have a secondary role. So anyhow,
right,
yes,
with the he's referencing the Electoral
Biden,
College.
Same way it's been done so far. Biden's programs are effective in many ways, but in some respects they're the best that we have seen for a long time. His climate program, that's the most important thing, because survival depends on it.
True.
It's not what I would like to see, but it's better than anything else that's been proposed. And that didn't get there by magic. That got there by hard work, by Sunrise Movement sitting in on congressional offices, getting support from AOC, who picked up Ed Markey in the Senate, supported them so they weren't kicked out. A moderately decent climate program was proposed. Now there's a much better one. It's actually by now a congressional resolution. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ed Markey have introduced a resolution which is right on target. It's a detailed, careful proposal, feasible for what must be done and can be done to avert disaster. It's pretty much the same as the International Energy Association and some of the most prominent and significant people who've worked on the details of how to deal with this, like my colleague Bob Pollin, who's the lead on this. So it's a very good resolution. Can it get from being a resolution to being legislation? Well, that depends on people like you. It got as far as it did because of quite a lot of activist pressure. If there's more activist pressure, it can move on. And the same is true on every other issue.
True.
So what we call the left, remember, is left by US standards. So Bernie Sanders we regard as the left. You read the liberal press in the United States, the most liberal columnists, say Paul Krugman in the New York Times, they'll say his policies are very good, but they're probably too radical for the American people. I suppose you go across the ocean and read the world's leading business newspaper, by no means left, Financial Times. Their associate editor, leading columnist, recently had a column in which she said, sort of as a quip, but not entirely, that if Bernie Sanders was running on the Conservative Party program in Germany, Christian Democrats, the Conservative Party, the right-wing party, he could be a candidate there because his programs are already accepted by the right wing in Germany. So
Jesus Christ.
Programs?
Wow.
Universal medical care, free college tuition. Yeah, they have that everywhere. Germany has it, France has it, Brazil has it, Finland has it. You know, it's not a big deal. It's a conservative position. It's in the United States, it's far to the left. Well, it hasn't always been this way. You go back to, I should say that I can't help these days thinking about my own childhood, early 1930s. Rather similar today in many ways. One way it was similar, this has to do with the left programs. One way it was similar that there was vast inequality, just like today. Labor movement had been crushed. There was a lot of anger, resentment, concern. Things were boiling over. There were two ways. This was happening all over the world. There were two ways out. One way out was fascism. That was picked in Germany. Another way out was social democracy. That was picked in the United States. The New Deal was basically what's now called social democracy. At that point, it wasn't. The United States was actually in many ways in the lead in developing social democratic programs, which were picked up and extended in Europe after the Second World War. Well, it's kind of where we are now. We're not facing fascism in the 1930 sense, but something unpleasantly like it, at least in symptoms. We have the option of social democracy, something like the New Deal. Going back to Biden, his programs have a kind of New Deal flavor. The jobs program could have been a New Deal program. CARES program, to a certain extent, could have been. Environmental programs, of course,
True.
Considered in the 30s, but they're the kind of programs that could have been part of the New Deal. So there's some similarity. Very much like the 30s, he's running into an iron wall of opposition. Total. Republican Party won't permit any of it. The Supreme Court is very reactionary, struck down all of Roosevelt's initiatives until something happened. The labor movement revived. It had been virtually destroyed, mostly by violence, even worse than today. Began to revive, CIO organizing, militant labor actions, a lot of political groups, lots of popular organization. Got to the point where labor was actually getting as far as sit-down strikes. It's around the mid-30s. That sends real fear into the mainstream establishment. Sit-down strike is just one step before saying, we don't need you. We can run this thing by ourselves, get lost. Okay? At that point,
Yes.
I'm simplifying, but it's kind of what happened. At that point, the reactionary court shifted, began to permit New Deal measures. The business world reluctantly began to accommodate to the Wagner Act, labor organizing, New Deal measures, and so on. And you got the rudiments of a social democratic framework, which lasted pretty much until the reversal in the late 70s and the early 80s, the business offensive, which has for
Human
40 years
capital
been
stock.
working
Thank you for
hard
the
to
follow.
roll back
Appreciate
all the
that.
progress. That's the neoliberal period. Well, we're back to something similar. So what's the future of the left? Depends again on what people like you will do, just as in the mid-30s, early 30s, depended on what your counterparts did at the time. They became engaged, committed, worked on it. It changed.
Yeah, there's sometimes this sense of self-defeating pessimism, I guess, that a lot of people have, that things are so bad, they've never been this bad. But it's not true, is it? It's better now than it was. I mean,
It's far better
yeah.
than it was in the 30s.
Or in the 60s.
Depression in
Yeah.
the 30s was far worse than what we see today, incomparably. Not only that, but the country's made a lot of progress since.
Yeah.
We shouldn't overlook that. The activism of the 1960s, its aftermath, really civilized the country in many ways. The things that we take that were considered normal at that time are unspeakable today. I mean, the 1960s, right through the 1960s. Right now, there's a housing crisis, serious housing crisis.
Yes.
What should happen is what happened in the 1930s. Federal government got involved in affordable public housing, but in a manner which went right through the 1960s and would be considered absolutely intolerable today. It had to be segregated. Public housing funded by the federal government had to block African Americans. That went on right through the 1960s. That wouldn't happen today. We've come forward in that respect, not by magic, by plenty of hard,
Absolutely, human
work
capital stock.
that pushed us beyond that. And the same is true in many other respects. Women's rights barely existed in the 1960s. Now a lot has changed. Same in other things. So we're in a much better situation now than we were in the 30s, and the conditions are nowhere near as awful as they were then. At that time, fascism meant real fascism. That meant brown shirts marching through the streets, meant concentration camps, meant powerful state run by a totalitarian party, which was so powerful it even controlled the business world. We have almost the opposite, the business world, mostly controlling the government. I mean, there are similarities, but we shouldn't overdo it. And the main similarity is that popular activism and engagement can make the difference between a move towards
That's right.
a kind of proto-fascism, and for which we see the symptoms, and a move towards authentic social democracy, maybe beyond.
Yeah, I think sometimes it seems to me that it's easier to make progress in the kind of like what's called identity politics areas of feminism, gay rights, trans rights, because so much work can be done just through consciousness raising. I mean, I guess I don't really
so
like to claim the value of an activist.
Maybe it's because I see things, I read between the, I don't know. I think that what he was saying is the answer to her question, right? How do we help push, how do we help push this administration to do things like, for example, climate change? Well, he told us it's people like us to stay engaged, to participate, and to be aware of what's happening, right? Be aware. Who is your local politicians? Who is your state representative? Who is your congressperson? What bills are they proposing? Stay, and he's telling you exactly what the answer is right there. He's telling you to pay attention, be aware. Not concrete actions. Yeah, I suppose he's not like saying do X, Y, or Z.
When I'm really more of an entertainer with a conscience, but I feel that as someone who has, I have a YouTube channel like that millions of people watch, you can really kind of shift things just by talking, because you can, put the idea in people's head of accepting groups of people who haven't been previously accepted, and that alone it goes a significant way towards changing the situation. I guess what seems more difficult to me is the move towards social democracy, where you have, I guess it feels harder to break through the power of corporate money and politics, and it seems less, to me anyway, like it's possible through sheer consciousness raising or activism. Like it's possible to, I think to a lot of people it seems like there's this I don't know, like unbreakable wall of money and politics that it's hard to get through with these with anything so sort of spiritual, idealistic, I guess, as activism, consciousness raising, protest movements.
The same in the 1930s.
Yeah.
There was an unbreakable wall of money and politics and corporate power, but it was broken. And it's been broken many times since. The reasons we've moved, it's not just consciousness raising. Consciousness raising leads to action. There are changes. The expansion of civil rights is not anywhere near as far as it should be, but it's real. It's dramatically different. Same with women's rights, same with gay rights, same with even inroads in control of the corporate sector.
That's right.
So, for example, now there are the beginnings of worker-owned enterprises, which are to some extent flourishing collectives. So that's all real. It's not
Right.
just
So he's
Congress's
giving
job.
you like
So yes, we have to, it
examples of
begins
what
with changing
he
people's
thinks would
beliefs
work.
and understanding, but then it turns into action. So let's go back to the most critical issue, that resolution I mentioned in Congress, the AOC Markey resolution. Well, that can be pushed to legislation, just as the New Deal measures were pushed to legislation. Right now, Supreme
All
Court,
right, hold on, folks. I'm
reactionary
gonna
court might block
take
it,
a quick
just as
bathroom
the
break.
court
I'll be right
blocked
back.
all the New Deal measures through the early 30s. But something changed. Popular power changed, and the court reluctantly went along. Even the threat, Roosevelt's threat to pack the court, add justices, that alone changed the decisions of the court markedly. They could see the writing on the wall. Can't get away with it anymore. Okay, that's how things change. You're always going to be engaged in class war against a bitter enemy. The business classes are basically vulgar Marxist, deeply committed to unremitting class war. But there's a limit to what they can get away with, because they don't actually have the power when it finally comes to push and shove. Power is in the hands of the population if they exercise it. Okay, but then you have to exercise it. That means persuasion, education, organization, action, and persistent activism, and it leads to changes.
I think maybe
No.
I think maybe an obstacle for a lot of people in terms of consciousness of our collective power is that it's sometimes difficult to see the long-term power of these incremental changes. So I think that especially when I have conversations with undergraduates and people that age, it's like they you start with a very philosophical approach to politics, and so that tends to produce like a kind of utopian thing. Oh, what should society look like? And then anything that's not producing that is seen as some kind of like morally corrupting compromise. And I guess this is I find I'm often in this argument with people where it's like they're using their philosophical conception. So like you say we don't have like there's not really a socialist politician of any significant like influence in the United States. We call the New Deal, basically we call that socialism now. So I think some people become cynical that well, this isn't real socialism, so it's not worth doing, and like like they're sort of holding out for, I don't know, some kind of revolutionary moment when suddenly everything is going to be good. But I don't know. I don't particularly think that's how it works.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Remember, there is one difference today and in the 1930s.
Poor kitty cat was meowing at me.
There were, at the time, in the 1930s, left political parties, which had a long tradition, had activists working in them. They weren't overwhelmed by illusions about instant gratification. They knew it's hard, long-term work, which will suffer regression. You make progress, you keep working. If things go bad, you work harder. But it's not going to be something you're going to get by snapping your fingers. So let's take a lot of young people's, you know better than I do, but I can see it, attitudes towards the Sanders campaign. It's widely described as a failure. It was a smashing success, an unbelievable success. Sanders broke with over a century of American political history, a century in which electability was pretty much determined simply by funding. This goes back to the late 19th century. You ask Mark Hanna, the great campaign organizer of the late 19th century, was asked once, what do you need to win a successful campaign? And he said, two things. The first one is money, and I've forgotten what the second one is. Well, that's the way American political history has been. Sanders broke with that. No corporate funding, no wealthy funding, media totally against him. He not only practically won, probably would have won if it hadn't been for Democratic Party machinations, but also has a very influential position. Right now, his position in Congress is quite influential. He plays a big role. Other people came in on the Sanders wave, like Ocasio-Cortez and others, and are having a big effect.
Yeah, I'll say for my own part,
successes. That's not failure. That's tremendous success. Okay, now you go on and build from there.
I mean, the Sanders campaign transformed my own imagination of what is possible. I guess previously I had thought, socialism is a permanent dirty word in this country. It's just not a pragmatic possibility. But I do think that just the visibility of this and the fact that he was able to build a movement, it does kind of change it changes people's capacity to imagine what's possible in the future. So I think that's pretty significant.
Go back 50 years, 1960s. One of the great moments of popular activism in the 1960s of the left, SDS, was when, must have been around 1968 or 69, the president of SDS, Paul Potter, gave a presidential address. He was a great guy, I should say, a wonderful guy. And in the presidential address of the SDS, the most left-wing organization, he, after a long build-up, he said, it's come time to name the system. And he said the word capitalism, and there was a silence. Wow, Somebody actually said the word. Okay, that's what it was like in the 1960s. You couldn't. It's not socialism. You couldn't say the word capitalism.
Yeah, that's very different. Yeah.
Okay, we've come a long way. It's true that the word. It's an interesting fact about the United States that it's the only country I know of outside of total totalitarian dictatorships where socialism is considered a four-letter word.
Yeah.
Every other country, socialism is, you say you're a socialist, like saying you're a Democrat. It's nothing. No. Yeah. So you're a socialist. So what? Well, that's a breakthrough. The 1960s, you couldn't say the word capitalism. Now you can. And you can even say the word socialism, social democracy, and not just say it, but implement some of the policies. Okay, those are changes. That's how things happen. And it's not just the words, it's the actions. And they're right on the table. Like take the climate issue is by far the most important one. But there's
I agree.
very serious problems in this country. There's tens of millions of people who don't have food on the table. There are people who are being thrown out in the streets because there's no affordable housing. Well, there are programs that could deal with those things. Actually, Biden's programs have a kind of New Deal flavor. If they could get through, they'd make a big dent in.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not gonna dispute that. I'm just kind of worried. The only thing that worries me in terms of like the climate thing is the timeline, right? Is the timeline that we have in order for us to kind of like start turning the ship around. That's my only concern.
These problems, a lot of people would be a lot better off. It wouldn't be a revolution, but we're not going to have a revolution tomorrow. Yeah. It would be a major change in people's lives. It would set the stage for going on. Now, what's happening with those programs? Well, 100% Republican opposition. We see it in Washington every time we open our eyes. Just a couple of days ago, Biden was criticized sharply, even in the liberal press, for making a terrible mistake. What was the mistake? He stood up and said, I'll accept the very limited stimulus program that the Republicans have permitted, but I'm going to continue to press for the broader one. Terrible mistake. Everyone came down on him hard. Of course, McConnell and the rest of the Republicans denounced him for backing off on a promise, but even the liberal press condemned him. How can you say a thing like that? How can you be minimally decent? Okay, well, you have to create an environment in which he's not blamed for that, but he's supported for it. Yes, he should press to try to get the rest of the program through. The Republicans have a red line. They made it very clear. The red line is you cannot do anything which in any way harms the ultra wealth and corporate power. They made that very explicit. The red line is you can't touch, to pay for these things, you can't touch the Trump tax scam, which was a huge giveaway. The one legislative program under Trump was a huge giveaway to the very rich in the corporate sector. The tax bill of 2017 harmed everyone else. And you can't touch that. That was made explicit. I'm not reading anything into what they said. No, that's the red line. Well, should we accept that? Of course not.
What do you think about, it seems that a significant obstacle to, what to do about the Republican Party, I guess part of the future of the left is the future of the right. It seems like the future of the right is Trumpism. And that, I don't know, the way I see that, it's like there's 40% of this country that has kind of checked out of public rationality itself. And so they're not really doing like reasoning in any conventional sense. Like when you have something like QAnon and the kind of free associative paranoia of Satanist cabals, of pedophiles running, it's like, there's like, it undercuts the ability to communicate with people, which you're even trying to say, because there's like a attack on what, the normal concept of what reality is. And so I suppose, some of these people simply have to be ignored, I guess, because when you can, obviously not everyone's, you're never going to have everyone agree, but I guess when you have like an obstructionist Republican Party, like, I don't know, it's just kind of alarming to me how many people are still supporting this despite.
You work on it. So for example, what you say is true. It's about 40% of the population. However, if you look a little bit more closely, it's age related. If you look at younger Republicans, it's by no means that extreme. Not great, but they're more open to discussion and thinking about these issues. Well, that's where you work. Turn the Republican Party. It's not fixed. There are many people who vote for Trump who voted for Obama. Okay, their genes haven't changed. Their picture of the world and what's possible has changed. There's one of the many reasons why the Republicans are dead set against allowing any progressive legislation to go through, is that if it does, it's going to peel off.
Yeah, I do respect.
If the Democrats
I do respect
putting
them
through programs that alleviate the conditions, which are very harsh for much of the population, there goes the voting base. They have a very strong
putting
reason
cinnamon
to make
rolls in the oven.
ungovernable.
Nice,
Not just
nice.
right,
That sounds very delicious.
Back into power, but one way to ensure that is to make sure that none of the legislation and actions that would improve people's lives ever get through. Okay, got to work on it. Got to make people understand that, and that can happen. If you want to think about the 1930s again, you had the same kind of ultra-right groups. There, in fact, 1933 came pretty close to a coup.
Yes, it is, because we are on a time constraint, unfortunately.
Marine commander who intervened and blocked the coup. That was a real coup attempt, not January 6th. anti-Semitic and fascist groups were all over the place, not just in the United States, but in England and elsewhere. In fact, take Germany. Bear in mind that Germany in the 1920s was the absolute peak of Western civilization. In the sciences, in the arts, literature was regarded as a model of democracy. That was Germany. Had a huge labor movement. One of the reasons the Nazis were able to come in is that the left was split. The Stalinist line at the time, followed religiously by the KPD, the Communist Party, was
They
that
aren't
the
from scratch. It doesn't matter.
Social
Still
Democrats,
good.
counterpart to the Bidenites, were worse than Hitler. They were social fascists. Trotsky, who was trying to urge the two parts of the left, the Social Democrats and the Communists, trying to urge them to unite, was bitterly condemned by the Communists as one of the worst figures in history because he was willing to cooperate with the social fascists who were worse than the Nazis. Okay, I think you can find counterparts to that in the left today.
Absolutely. Yeah, so don't let the left be split. Don't let the coalition get broken up in that way, right? I guess it reminds me of what happened, what I saw happening in 2016, where when you had like Trumpism first showing up, and before Trump was even running on the internet, I guess I was kind of tracking what to me was like this disturbing like emergence of like proto-fascist like leanings of anti-Semitism and like race science and this kind of thing, and they were able to recruit basically by targeting dissatisfaction with what some people would say as like extreme leftist activism, right? So they would male resentment of feminism, for example. That's the point where they could get in and bring people over to their side, or white people sort of not understanding the point of Black Lives Matter. That's the point. You can bring people over by appealing to that. So to me, I guess as a persuasive challenge, it was all about like, how do we stop? Again, it is mostly young people, like you say. That's when people tend to be more pliable with their beliefs, and you can kind of people who are sort of starting to flirt with right-wing ideology. You can intervene at that moment, yeah, I guess that's to me sort of what I've tended to want to focus on is to notice how the far right's rhetoric is targeting the kind of conflict between like leftists and liberals and centrists, and is able to use that to get power.
Well, it's their job.
Yeah.
Their job is to try to cause conflict and antagonisms inside the left. Obviously, the job of the left is to do the same to them. Strip off those parts of the far right which are, in fact, which have real grievances, which can be addressed, dealt with, and bring them around to understand that there are ways to deal with
okay, so I feel like sometimes this could be...
Destruction of the environment is not a joke. It's going to destroy their lives, their children's lives. There won't be anything around. Okay.
I feel like sometimes like people can like take this the wrong way. So what I would say is like, you have to reach people, which I imagine like he would agree with this. You have to reach people where they are. There are real grievances that some of these people have that lead them to believe what they believe, or are they're more susceptible. There are real reasons why this happens, right? We have to present them an option, a parallel option, but it's got to be based, first and foremost, it's got to be based on reality, facts, truth.
Okay, they can come to understand that. And actually among younger Republicans, there's more appreciation of facts like that. It's very much like any other issue. Let's take the Vietnam War. By the late 1960s, there was a substantial anti-war movement. It didn't come about by nothing. In the early 60s, when Kennedy sharply escalated the war, it was almost impossible to talk about it. I mean, I was giving talks in a church with half a dozen people. Most of them wanted to kill you. We couldn't have public in Boston, where I live, the most liberal city in the country. We couldn't even have public meetings against the war until about late 66, 67, because they'd be broken up by students, by pro-war students. It takes work, okay? It doesn't just happen by itself. Same with civil rights. People in the, SNCC workers in the South faced extreme hostility all over. Actually, when Martin Luther King moved his
he was a linguist,
North, began opposing racism in the North, working for a poor people's movement, he was bitterly attacked by the liberal community and practically destroyed even before he was assassinated. Well, it takes work. The kinds of things he was talking about then, you can talk about now. I mean, the Black Lives Matter has way more support, public support, than King had at the peak of his popularity. It's because things have changed.
Well, it seems like a significant advantage is with the way that information is disseminated on the internet. It's, at the moment at least, it's much more difficult for them to crack down on it. So there is kind of a genuine freedom of information, which of course can also produce conspiracy theories and misinformation, and it can be misused in ways too. But I think free speech is not negligible in terms of it at least allows you to, gives you an opportunity to say what needs to be said.
There are plenty of opportunities.
That's right.
Lots of problems, lots of difficulties. Nothing's going to be easy. It's been harder before, and people didn't give up.
Freedom of speech allows you to say what needs to be said, or said, or say what you want to say.
Not great. It's not wonderful. Plenty of rotten things.
It gives you an opportunity.
A couple decades ago,
I like that.
It's a big improvement.
Yeah, and that's kind of as good as you can do.
So I'll jump in now. Thank you, Natalie and Noam. We have a bunch of questions in the chat. Just is there any hard stop for either Noam or Natalie? We can go a little bit above the hour if some of the questions.
It's fine with me.
All right, so I'll take in. Oh, everyone, let there be light in the stoa. You can turn on your camera now, and I will we'll probably squeeze in one or two questions. So Evan, you're up first.
All right, thank you. Let me find my question real quick. My question is, so how can the left become more effective in actual policymaking in the face of sustained obstructionism in Congress? Even such energetic new figures as AOC are not consistently operating to take advantage of the almost certainly temporary Democratic control of government. When the right is in power, on the other hand, they don't seem to generally pursue the mirage of bipartisan agreement on their signature legislative initiatives, but the left seems content to let the right torpedo meaningful reform on the most important topics, like climate change and voting rights, in the name of some dated ideal of bipartisanism. So how can those of us who care about the world convince our representatives to play hardball in implementing policy when we have the opportunity to do so?
How do we deal with the, I'm not sure I totally understand, how do we deal with the rigid opposition and move towards some sort of bipartisanship?
Well, no, my question is specifically that when the left is in power, the ideal of bipartisanship they seem to maintain, and so they therefore fail to get much done in the face of obstructionism.
They go low, we go high, right? That's
right. So my question is, if you are a leftist and you want your representatives to pass legislation, even if it's not bipartisan, what would your suggestions be to get that sort of thing done?
If the left happens to have control over Congress, should it refuse to pass legislation if it's not bipartisan? I don't see why. If you can get it through, get it through. I mean, I think, when you talk about bipartisanship, remember that the Republican Party is no longer a normal political party. You go back 20 or 30 years, the Republican Party was a political party. So my dog doesn't agree, but I'll go ahead anyway. I mean, in the past, I voted for Republicans during the 1960s when I was down at civil rights demonstrations in the South and trying to get some government federal support to try to prevent the state troopers, say in Mississippi, for just beating everyone bloody. I called a Republican representative because he was the one who was most likely to give some help. Republicans were a political party at the time. In fact, you go back to Eisenhower, a lot of what he says sounds like Bernie Sanders. His strong and pro-union statements are about as strong as anything.
So yeah, like it
in those days.
I think what he's trying to say is like you gotta kind of weigh your options and understand that at the end of the day you always will be voting for the lesser of two evils, and you have to seriously consider which candidate on the ballots are going to do the most amount of good for the most amount of people. Like that's the whole point. That's why you have this power of voting. But I don't think he like really heard the guy's question. The only thing that we can do as citizens, which every citizen should be as engaged as possible, is again know who your representative is. Right? If you see a bill. If you see a bill coming down the pipeline that says we're going to deal with, I don't know, climate change. We're going to deal with climate change. It is the civic responsibility of everybody who's interested in that to call their representatives, call and make a campaign like an awareness campaign, and put as effectively what it would be as pressure to your representatives, because they're supposed to be representing you to get that legislation passed, right? That's how you should do it. That's how it's happened in the past.
Republicans were a legitimate political party. That's changed in the last 10 or 20 years. They're not a party. Actually, even mainstream commentators describe them as a radical insurgency that's abandoned parliamentary politics. That's it started under Gingrich, picked up under Hastert. Just became outlandish under McConnell. When Obama came in, McConnell said straight out, almost in these words, our goal is to make sure that he cannot accomplish anything. Okay? That's saying we abandon parliamentary politics. We're not a political party. We are a party that represents the super rich and the corporate system, and we'll do anything to gain power, period.
I do think the Democrats have kind of begun to notice this, like especially after Trump and after January 6th. Like it's not like in the Obama administration where there was a sense almost that Obama would allow himself to be obstructed. I feel that is kind of to some extent coming to stop.
McConnell and Trump really put the finishing touches on it. But it's been going on for quite a while in the Republican Party, in many ways, back to Nixon's Southern strategy, but picked up in the 90s and this millennium. But that doesn't mean it's permanent. There are even legislators in the Republican Party who are amenable to some kind of discussion. Lisa Murkowski, occasionally Susan Collins. But the main thing to do is just to change the party, turn it back to a political party. And younger people can do that. Turn the Republicans back to a normal political party. I won't like their policies, but at least they'll be, within the framework of parliamentary politics. It's not like the Nazis, who you couldn't possibly bring in. It was impossible. They're not like that.
Do you have a follow-up,
Evan? So yeah, I guess my quick follow-up is specifically focused on the Democratic side of this, because it seems that still to this day, the Democrats are not doing things like, for example, getting rid of the filibuster that would allow them to pass a more a better policy agenda, especially for things like climate change, where the clock is ticking. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on how to convince the Democrats to play more hardball.
Try to convince them. There's no magic keys. You just work to try to convince them. Yeah, they ought to. How do you convince Joe Manchin and Karen Sinema to go along with getting rid of the filibuster?
Kirsten Sinema,
Well,
but
it's not so simple.
we'll
Because
forgive
if
you.
there was a move to get rid of the filibuster,
Yeah,
McConnell
so
has possible ways of reacting.
right. So like again, that's exactly my point, right? The only thing that the only thing that we can do is our civic duty, right? Our civic duty. Like, call up your representatives if that's what you want to accomplish. Call your representatives. Understand who they are. What bills are being passed. Why is he advocating to save the Republican Party? No, I don't think he's advocating for that. He's just saying, like, look, there's always going to be people, because people are people, who don't agree, and at least can we get to the point where we are sitting in reality, right?
He could use maneuvers to virtually close down the Senate. There are techniques that can be used if you're a real wrecker. You want to destroy the country, which he would do to keep power. There are methods that could be used simply to close down Congress, Senate at least, and then means nothing would pass. So it's a difficult job. I mean, I read left commentators these days, actually friends, who are criticizing, sharply condemning Biden because he didn't get Medicare for all through, and he didn't get a minimum wage, and he doesn't end the filibuster. Okay, how? How do you do it? Well, not by sitting at your desk and sending off Twitter tweets. That doesn't work. So yes, he didn't do it, and there's absolutely no way he could do it. So get to work and help create the conditions in which it can be done. That's the answer. It's always the answer.
All right. Let's take it next.
Yeah. So again, if you believe in these things, I love how everyone and their spouses and pets wants to be in frame. He's such a rock star. Yeah, his little doggo. His little doggo. Anyways, so the TLDR is, it's true. Listen, the only way things happen, the only way we create a balance between, because right now it's obviously incredibly skewed between obviously, corporations and these wealthy individuals have effectively an undue influence in terms of politics, right? We're only speaking about electoral politics. We're only speaking about legislative like politics and how that works. We're just speaking about that. If you want to kind of like tip the balance a little bit, you have to participate. You have to participate. If you believe in some of these things, if you like what's happening in Congress, if you don't like what's happening in Congress, send a note to your representative. Gather petitions, gather awareness, and make campaigns to make people aware of whatever it is that you're fighting for. Is it climate change? Okay, great. So make sure that you recognize, for example, I don't know, I'll use Florida. So my representatives, unfortunately, are people like Matt Gaetz, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, and all these other people, right? Okay, great. Now we know who they are. Create petitions. Create petitions that have massive amount of signatures. Create awareness campaigns. Call your representatives, and stay engaged. I mean, like that's the only way. I mean, what else are we supposed to do? In terms of how you put pressure on the electoral, like in order to play electoral politics, right? And I know it's kind of a weird term to say play politics, but you get my point.
Next question, Benita Roy, you got a question.
Hi.
You're on mute, Benita.
Yeah, I'm here. Greatly appreciating your appearances. And I'm going to frame this question in terms of Professor Chomsky's work, but I would also like very much to hear Natalie's take on it, because I've seen a lot of your philosophical entertainment things that go deep and broad in and like go places where no one has gone before. So I'm trying to do those two things at the same time. So Professor Chomsky, I grew up reading your books, and I have a fan on. Is it too loud? Okay. And I think the first book I read was Manufacturing Consent.
There's an idea.
Book, you were problematizing the political machinations of the United States and the media and the think tanks. And interestingly, Consilience Project, run by Daniel Schmottenberger, he's been on the STOA, they just released an article on, how public persuasion happens, what are the perverse incentives, how this whole thing happens. And what's interesting to me is that the right is developing a critique of the left about the hegemonic manufacturing of consent in the media. And my question is manufacturing consent problematic across all content, or only if it's not the content, if it's not left content or the content you believe in?
The right wing has always argued that that the media are way to the left, even communist. Like the end of the Vietnam War, for example, Freedom House, which is usually considered liberal, launched a huge attack against the media for being so unpatriotic that they lost the war. In fact, if you take a look at the book Manufacturing Consent, there's a part of it that not many people read. The last roughly quarter of it is a defense of the media against the attack from Freedom House. Freedom House launched a huge attack saying the reason we lost the Vietnam War, as they put it, is because the reporters on the scene were so passionately pro-communist, anti-American, unpatriotic, that they were stabbing us in the back. And see, we have a long review of that in which we show that they're just lying through their teeth. All the evidence that they produced is exactly the opposite. It's one of the most amazing examples of
why do Democrats want to close the loopholes?
You can read it and see it.
What does that mean?
Liberals, incidentally. But yes, they were attacking the media as being far to the left. If you go to the right, it's much more. Go back to the 1950s, McCarthyism and so on. Everybody in the media is a communist. So sure, the right wing will always claim that the media are ultra-left elites who are trying to destroy the country. That's part of their shtick, so they're going to do that. It's ridiculous, of course, but so the response is, okay, let's tell the truth about it. Let's tell the truth. In fact, in our defense of the media against Freedom House, what we pointed out was the reporters were honorable, courageous, telling the truth about what they saw, but doing it within a framework of support for the ruling doctrines. They were saying,
I met him when I was 4 or 5, and he visited my dad and others and protested the Vietnam War and moved to Canada. Nice.
It's a deviation from what we are. It's undermining our long-term commitment to democracy and freedom.
Why do Democrats, are you asking why do Democrats want to close the loopholes, the tax loopholes? I'm not aware that they're actually interested in doing that. But if they were, I would be in favor of that.
The left-wing elites, we don't have a chance to talk and so on. They claim that about the universities. Right now, we're in the midst of an interesting example of that. The right-wing hysteria about critical race theory. They haven't a clue what critical race theory is, and they don't care. It's just some demonic thing run by the radical left to make our kids, if they're white, feel that they're guilty of everything that ever happened. Does it matter? How do you respond? Telling the truth, exposing the truth. There's no other way.
It can kind of backfire, can't it, once they decide to point a villain like critical race theory? Because now you have a bunch of people previously no idea what critical race theory is, looking up critical race theory. Well, that's an opportunity to step in and to present a different narrative about critical race theory that you may not have even had before.
Exactly. It's an opportunity to bring out what critical race theory really is and why should we take it seriously. Yeah. Okay. It's not an attack on your children in school. It's an effort to bring about an understanding of our actual history and the legacy that it has left. It's not just history, it has a legacy. I mean, what I said before about the racist housing programs, that has a legacy. That's a large part of the reason for the vast wealth disparity between blacks and whites. White workers could get a house in the 1950s and 60s. Black workers couldn't. That has an impact on all the racist, ugly, disgraceful racist history, has a major impact on today. Same is true of the extermination of the indigenous population. Again, go back to the 60s and see how far we've come. In the 1960s, the leading left liberal anthropologists were writing that when the English colonists came, there was nobody here, just a bunch of hunter-gatherers straggling around, maybe 1 million of them. They were off by about 80 million. There was a tax that led to extermination and expulsion on an incomparable scale. All of that was unknown in the 1960s. Finally broke through. Now we know something about it. We can do something about the legacy that it left. Those are changes, major changes. Again, took place the same
so
way.
Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that.
Work. Nothing happens easily against extreme antagonism, just the kind you're seeing now. When the New York Times ran the 1619 series, it was a real breakthrough. That would have been impossible a couple of years earlier, but there was extreme backlash. From the right, the backlash was to ban it from being used. Literally ban it. We can't know those things. But even if you look at liberal scholars started carping about, this footnote was wrong and should have been a little different and so on. There was a backlash across the board. You don't want to expose all that stuff. Well, it did reach a lot of people. It's part of the changes that led to the extraordinary uprising after the George Floyd assassination. Well, things change, but it takes work.
If your original question was about, well, yes, does the media always have some kind of bias? Well, obviously it does. I think that part of the fight about part of the fight is about what the media says. What should the bias be? Should it be a bias? I mean, pro-democracy is a kind of bias, right? But I think that we would argue that that's the bias that the journalism ought to have, a bias for democracy against fascism, right? And so part of the fight is not just
Well, the bias should be like the bias against like what objective, what objectively happened, right?
Obviously,
That's the bias.
So, yes, of course, the right-wing line about how communist news network and the notion that there's some kind of far left agenda in mainstream American journalism is not true. But and there's some kind of agenda there always will be. So I don't think that in and of itself is a problem.
I didn't entirely grasp what you were saying.
Oh, I just thought the original question asker was asking like about whether consent is manufactured, whether it's always manufactured by, I guess, the media that sets the terms of a conversation.
Well, I mean, it's true that the media are institutions which are, to a significant extent, bound by the nature of their institutional structure. They are major corporations. They're selling a product, namely readers or watchers, to other corporations, advertisers. So you've got major corporations selling people like you to other corporations. They're closely linked to government, flow up and back from government.
Yeah, and that's inherently the problem right there.
Hegemonic culture, which is in the universities and intellectual culture altogether, about American innocence, nobility, and so on. So that's the framework in which work goes on. That doesn't mean they don't do good reporting. They do. First thing I do in the morning is read the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. That's where you get the information. You have to compensate for the inherent distortions that are part of the.
Yeah, basically, I think that unfortunately we're like running out of time, but I think that his point. Hey, how's it going? I think his point is that we have to kind of sift through biases because that's always going to exist. But I think that we can also like make an effort to just make an effort to be as, in terms of when we talk about like politics and the stuff that's happening, to be as truthful and objective as humanly possible, right? Like when we talk about whatever's going on in the world, when we talk about what's going on in the world, like we have to talk about it as it is, right? As it is.
Nature of the institutions, and they change. You see things in the New York Times today that would have been inconceivable a couple of years ago, like the 1619 Project, and plenty more. There are columnists in the New York Times today who could never have been admitted years ago. Okay, that's part of the change that's taken place in the general culture as the result of a lot of hard work. Affects the institutions as well. That's the way you make progress. No other way has ever been discovered. Afraid I'm going to have to leave. I've got another interview coming.
So yeah, we'll close out here. Thank you, Noam, if you have to head out.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think we got the TLDR. I mean, like, at the end of the day, what matters in terms of news and politics and all this other stuff, what matters is to A, think critically, understand what you're reading or watching, and B, when as a creator or even as somebody who, like, I don't know, wants to post something on the internet that a lot of people may see, it is your responsibility to try to be as objective and truthful as possible, right? That's just how it should be, right? We should strive for that. When I talk about climate change, I'm not saying things that I pulled randomly out of my head that I'm willing into existence, right? No. When I talk about climate change, I got these ideas, these notions, these politics, these policies because of the rigorous studies that people have done. I'm not a climate scientist. Why would I pretend to be so? I go to the people who know what they're talking about. And I try to be as realistic. I try to be as truthful in terms of the data that I understand. And I try to be as objective as possible in terms of like the data that I see, right? We have to stop acting like football team, fan clubs. It is so detrimental. Absolutely true. Yeah, that's right. I'm just a show for big science. Correct. So like, we can't lose grasp of that, because once that goes as a norm, we have huge problems. We are having huge problems, right? Which I went over. An example would be 40%. What was it? Ah, God, now I forgot. Too many percent of people believing that there was some serious shenanigans in the election when that never happened. It's not based on reality. It's just not true. Nico_CS, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I think that goes a long way when you talk to people. I think it goes a long way if you are some type of content creator. It goes a long way even as just a regular person posting on Facebook. It would do people good to take a step back and have critical thinking about what they're posting, about what they watch, and it could do society good, I think, right? And no one's immune to biases. No one's immune to be stuck kind of in this mentality of what Human Capital Stock was saying about team sports. I'm not immune to that. I am biased. I have a bias. Obviously, you can see it. I'm telling you about it. I'm telling you what the bias is here. But my biases are framed and based on in what I see to be as a consensus of X, Y, or Z. I'm still wearing my 80 t-shirt, by the way. I love it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's not the size of the science, it's the laws of the motion of the ocean. True. Octosquidies. Yes, Human Capital Stock. So, my point being is, in order for us to function, we have to have some modicum of a basis in reality. And we have to understand that there are agendas that people push. Not all agendas are bad, but there are agendas that people push. There are narratives that people push. And our job is to think critically about whether or not this is good, whether or not this is beneficial, whether or not this is true. I assume that we as critical thinking people, that's what we should go to, right? My point being is, do not take anything that I say as gospel. Do not take anything that I say as truth, right? That's my entire the entire purpose of this channel. The name, A Difficult Truth, is because sometimes, yes, indeed, the truth is difficult, but that is a difficult truth, is it not? The bobbleheads you listen to on the internet, myself included, can be wrong. We get it wrong sometimes, okay? I'm watching from Denmark. The American left looks like one big shit show. True. We should have some sort of sports team contest to decide who's in charge of government. Teamwork makes the dream work. No. Oh no, I'm not up for the idea of determining politics by by a team a sports game. No. No. Basketball for president. No. I am not in favor of that. At the very least, it'll help people actually read stories before reposting it. I mean, I'll take that. I'll take that as a step forward in the right direction. Okay? Because as we sometimes have seen in this stream live, as it happens, I've done oopsies, right? Where I take a story and I think that what I'm reading is interesting, and then the more I read it, I start to realize, whoa, wait a minute, you know, it happens. It happens. Takes a bit from everyone to learn and stand alone. Yeah, but by standing alone, then you can stand together. a perfect example, Heat. A perfect example, Heat, as we went over yesterday or the day before. That wonderful, very credible source, the Christian Broadcast Network, which I confused for an actual news site. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. The best way to, I would say, improve society is, in case you haven't been here long, Human Capital Stock, a lot of what I talk about, a lot of my politics that I talk about in terms of how I got to where I am, just galvanizing, just by effectively talking to chat, reading news, absorbing different people's perspectives, I've arrived at essentially what I galvanized in my head, with, of course, the help of others, into what I call the 4 pillars, which I talk about pretty frequently. I think that society, at the baseline, should have these things. 4. Food, housing, education, and healthcare. You get these 4 things, guaranteed, a lot of problems will start to alleviate themselves. Not solved, but I think that it is a step into laying out the baseline of what a functioning society should be, right? And that goes for everybody: food, housing, education, and healthcare, right? All of these things, if you can get them to everybody as a citizen in your country, you are moving in the right direction, because that is where things begin to happen, right? I think so. I think a lot of people would agree. Alright, folks, it is about to be just 11:20. I appreciate all of you guys hanging out here. It is a based line, if you will. True. True. Alright, folks. I do appreciate all of you guys hanging out here. You guys are what makes this channel grow. I thank you for all of your support and hanging out with me. Thank you all for the new follows: Nico_CS, Garasilo, Human Capital Stock. Thank you for the follows here. Future Wolf with the tier 1 subscription. I appreciate it. You guys are what makes this channel grow. If you guys enjoy the content, make sure you hit that follow button. Do the YouTubes. Alright, do the YouTubes. It helps us out. And join our Discord if you want to keep up with the channel offline. And of course, spread the word far and wide that this is the chillest place to be for news and politics. We do news and politics Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. roughly about 11-ish a.m. And we have Saturday Catterdays about noon, where we just hang out, play video games, hang out with the co-host, things like that. Yeah, just a more chill vibe. Human Capital Stock, thank you so much. Atlantic Will Jesse, thank you for stopping by. Thank you, Spread It Forward. I appreciate you. And as always, follow all of these wonderful folks that are here in chat. Heat420_. Jesse has their YouTube channel. Let's see, I believe Kate. I believe we have who else? Did I miss anybody? Just making sure I get everybody. Surf will go gritty, yes. Can't forget. So make sure you follow all those wonderful folks. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next stream, Saturday Catterday. See ya! Alright, hang tight, folks. Bleep. Bleep blop blem. Bleep blop ben. Alright? Hang tight with us, show some love. Peace. Thank you, Surfer Go Gritty. The Chomsky thumbnail was all this clickbait I needed. True. Well, it's not clickbait if it happened. Alright, let's go. Folks, hang tight with me. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.